What up, Naughty Steppers? It's Connor Whitmore here again with another review for you on the Nawtystep channel. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the new compilation from Dodge and Fuski, the greatest remix album of all time. Here we have 13 fresh takes on the originals that made up Dodge and Fuski's The Greatest Album of All Time. An LP that I thought had a lot of great moments spanning across the 40-minute runtime, with a load of variation in genre and sound, a wide array of collaborative influences as well. And looking back on it, I would say that it's a project I enjoyed a fair bit more than I didn't. A lot of which I feel was down to it being Dodge and Fuski and the way that they wove some of their old sound into the other more modern approaches on show. And so going into this remix album, I was interested as to just how much of the original LP's feel would remain. Whether these edits would do the originals justice, or whether they would sound more like originals in themselves. My final thoughts on which you will get once I've run through all 13 tracks individually. To start off with, not sure I've heard of an introduction being remixed before, but they do so in the best way here. Whether Samuel L. Jackson is an upgrade on Morgan Freeman, I don't know, but it definitely works and is a great idea. The bleeps for the swear words are pretty hilarious, and I think you just have to take it as it is. And the impression is pretty decent, although I'm not sure how often you hear Samuel L. Jackson screaming consistently like that, but it's another good use of Fiverr from Rob and Chris. The Gentleman's Club remix of Back with a Vengeance I like for its patience. I think it generally builds really well considering how hype the original can be. There's a really nice contrast between the quelled moments and the dubstep, good transitioning between them as well. Something about the synths in the drops that feels a bit distant, so you don't get the utmost thwack from it. But in terms of reworking the original, it's good. Not great drop ideas, but it really feels like a remix. Nasco's take on Turn It Up is just pure wild, high energy, bombastic BROSTEP, very bright and full of life. A track that bubbles beneath the surface, ready to burst, the gnarliness and savagery of it always looming. Pretty creative, flavoursome, playful as well. The changes for the second drop are a perfect example of that. Again, not special or unique ideas-wise, but it really propels you forward. A lot of what I like about this style, solid tune. Even more colourful is the Chime remix of Mistakes, which is stacked with musicality and all-round cleverness. The incorporation of the vocal in the intro isn't the cleanest, but other parts here more than make up for that. Some of the articulation and angling of the sounds in the dubstep is brilliant, good mix between full throttle and vibrant as per. Second drop is initially a little bit empty comparatively, but that doesn't take away from what is a very full, exuberant edit, clearly his as well. I love the opening to Adair's remix of Little Blip. That melody was one of my favourite moments on the whole album, and he builds on it well. And he gets the right idea with the drops, but the execution for me needs to be a bit sharper, snares in particular. It's just big Riddim-like sound, some nice effects, but a lot of noise. The force is felt, but only to an extent. Also, I could be mistaken here, but I don't feel like it takes a lot from the original. So yeah, not one of my favourites here. Oliverse does well to retain the bouncy feel of Dog Eat Dog. There's a lovely swing to it that lasts for pretty much the whole track, with a load of cheeky sounds on offer, again full of flavour, but I do feel like the drops could have hit much harder. In his song Get High, I'm blown away every time, and I feel like that could have been translated here. It's fruity and pleasant, but I'm not knocked off my seat. The second drop picks the track up, but generally I think it needs a little more to really leave a mark, even though it is so nice on the ear. Honestly, the Barely Alive remix of Silence is golden, just reminds me of how welcomed the original is in the actual album. And it's welcomed here as well, to be honest. A quick breather amidst the carnage, slightly awkward feel to it, which I feel only Barely Alive could have done. I love the idea that people might have expected a fat remix and got absolutely nothing. The potential disappointment makes me laugh. But I mean, what else do you expect? Like, there's nothing in the original, and 0 times anything will always be 0, so there you go, math. 5 minutes of nothing is quite a while though, to be honest. Samplifier comes through with a very sinewy, shiny and metallic edit of Exposure, almost blinding sonically. Really does what it can to smack you in the face. The positioning of the sounds in the drops is very good throughout. Definitely parts where it needs more going on, a bit of variety perhaps to keep it ticking over and support the largeness of the sound. But overall it's pretty solid. Also appreciate the 5.5 minute track length and the dramatic builds. It certainly makes an impression. Definitely one of the most interesting cuts here is Mad Girl's take on Massacre, very welcomed at this point in the album. The drops are psytrancey but darker than usual, cleaner execution needed, but the idea is great, really gets the blood pumping. The energy builds on itself more and is quite maddening, enjoying the vibe of this one quite a lot to be fair. Definitely needs refining and given more of a high definition feel, but it's a brilliant addition to the album and a great spin on the original. Probably the most mixed track on the album for me is the Al Ross and So-Man remix of Hungry Hippos. I love the way they play with the introduction riff, got this translucent feel to it, the way that it kinda snakes around you, it's very fluorescent. The drops, however, I find a bit plain. They keep it alive by changing it up in bits, but ultimately that doesn't offer all that much. Meaning there's a bit of a disconnect between the dubstep and everything else, so not the most rounded track here, I wouldn't say. Then we have Lectrique's remix of Normality, a song not massively different from the preceding one in its disconnect between sections. I appreciate the range of different genres he includes here, another where the general force of the drops is pretty spot on, but it isn't big on feeling. A lot of it is just heavy, dark sounds without a lot of colour behind it, which stops me from getting fully into it. I really like the video game sort of opening, and I'm left wondering just how the track would have been if he translated that feeling into the rest of it. Penultimately, we have Infect's take on Streets of Rage, and honestly I feel this one probably appeals the least to me. I enjoy the tense introduction, but then it goes straight into the Riddim, which sounds muddied and harsh, kind of dragging along. Very classic of the genre, moments that fold in and creep back up, consistent, but it just has a weirdly unpolished feel to it. And I think you've really got to like this original Riddim style to enjoy the track, one that unfortunately just isn't for me. And finally, we have perhaps the most interesting remix on the album, Ominous bringing a drum and bass surprise to close. Which isn't bad at all, I like the approach he's taken here, quite insistent, and it's cleanly put together. Both drops, however, do go on for too long, and that is ultimately what I dislike about his style generally. It doesn't cut off at the right moments. But it's another welcomed idea on the album, a jumpy, unexpected turn, and a fun way to round off the greatest remix album of all time. And so overall, would I say that this remix album keeps enough of the original album's feel? Yeah, I'd say so. There are enough edits here taking a good amount from their originals, reminding us of moments we loved from the album in new and inventive ways. Definitely a couple also that don't do quite enough on that front, but they're drowned out by those that do, in my opinion. I really like that every song from the album was covered, and that no original was covered twice, maximum variety. And there are aspects or moments from pretty much every track here that I enjoy. The track listing works well too. Whilst it may not be the greatest remix album of all time, there's certainly some very good stuff in here. Enough that I'll listen to it through a few times more, even a couple that will rank alongside my favourites of this year. And on that note, in terms of my favourite on the LP, I can't choose between the Nasco, Chime and Mad Girl. I love the general feel of all three of them, and they've all got an equal amount of good moments to them in my opinion. And so there we have it for my thoughts on the greatest remix album of all time. What did you guys make of it? Do you have a favourite track from the 13? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, give it a big old thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell along the way, social media accounts in the description box down below. If you're looking for some other Disciple related videos on the channel, check out the link right here. And lastly, if it's naughty, then you know guys, so be sure, as always, to keep it naughty and stay safe. And I shall see all of you legends in the next one. Peace out.